You have a reaction to Mississippi State's decision on an incoming player? That punishment?
Same reaction that I had earlier in the week, that's not a part of the policy that's assigned to the conference office. That is an institutional responsibility.
Greg, is there any further talk of changing that or the dialogue about that?
We'll continue to talk.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Excuse me?
Did any chancellor or president ask about it today? About
We've talked through the week about the policy and why we're in a certain place, why we are focused on transfers, so that's continued. Today's focus was not on legislation other than the final votes.
Greg, Scott said yesterday that his office was in communication with the conference office throughout the decision-making process, and indicated that there was feedback back and forth. What was the conference's feedback in terms of that decision?
It's interesting to hear that and to read that and to be asked that question, because I'm quite protective of that communication. I saw a word comfortable. I would not express comfort with a situation like that. It is difficult. We are the conference wrestling with these issues, and obviously in a public way. And certainly no one in the commissioner's office, in my office, would communicate comfort with that situation. Yet, the reality is those institutional decisions are still left at that level.
Would this instance make you rethink that? Or explore that, the fact that those decisions are left at an institutional level? Would you?
Oh, I would anticipate that the conversation never stopped. So just understand that for the purpose of the output from last year's review, it's focused on transfers in Proposal 5A. Do I anticipate continuing dialogue on these issues? Absolutely.
But would you anticipate a dialogue that says the conference office should have the power, for instance, in a case like this, to make a decision to say, regardless of what Mississippi State said, the conference says, no, that doesn't apply in the SEC? We
can keep pursuing. So I think I've answered it to say I can envision a continuing dialogue that looks at what we've done on serious misconduct relative to transfers, and the question will be asked, is that sufficient? Should we just remain there? That doesn't predict outcomes, but I envision that will be a conversation topic going forward.
Greg,
But I never anticipated that we were done. So this isn't a Thursday announcement trigger. This conference has been wrestling with the issue, and it's not easy. I hope people can appreciate that. It is not as if this is done in a sterile environment. And I think that's an important conversation. I've said that last year, I've said that this year. There's a point at which the legislation concluded for this week, and we'll see what the future might hold without prediction.
Greg, until that conversation does continue, when an advertiser could potentially come to you, when your sponsors come to you.
I'm not going to answer hypotheticals.
Scott Strickland said yesterday that he talked to the SEC about the one-game suspension and made it sound like you guys were okay with that.
Yeah, I think I answered that question. I don't know what Scott said fully. I've read some articles. It is an institutional decision. The notion of comfort with this situation is not a characterization I would provide. Awareness and comfort are two different things. It is a difficult circumstance.
Did you see the video of the incident?
Several weeks ago.
Without addressing hypothetical, Greg, are you concerned about the potential for your commercial partners, network partners, to be upset about Mississippi State's decision?
I think a different verb makes it still a hypothetical.
Greg, on the violence provision, when it says conduct of a nature that creates serious concerns about the safety of others, that's obviously broad, vague, whatever. How does that get broken down, interpreted?
It's a vague world. You know, it's a recognition that you can't define everything within one page.
So I mean, you guys, does every transfer idea then come to you guys and you have an opportunity to either approve or dismiss? Or
You know, the expectation and experience is there are very small numbers of people who would encounter, whether it's specific or a less specific piece of language. So no, not every transfer might arrive on my desk.
I'm curious on your proposal 5A here. You talked a little bit on Tuesday before this was officially out about the difficulty of trying to reconcile what may be juvenile records and everything else associated with that, and specifically the transfer student athlete, and it's bolded now, at any point after enrollment at a collegiate institution. I'm just kind of curious in general about the difficulty of setting when this thing starts, because obviously this is a transfer policy, and I do think the juvenile record aspect of it is really complicated, but they have to enroll at a collegiate institution. So even if you had this policy and it applied to everybody, it wouldn't apply in the Mississippi State situation because he hasn't enrolled at a collegiate institution. So how do you reconcile, I guess, in some sense, what happens before you're even old enough to get to a college campus, and whether that's appropriate to be looked into, or whether they deserve to be on campus? I mean, and how do you politically get something more expansive than this done?
Can I go back to his question?
I mean, it's a challenge.
No, I think that's my illustration earlier, that we've been wrestling with this. And the acknowledgement that there is difficulty in the issue. And so what is adopted here is the recognition that we clearly needed some work on the transfer issue based on some experiences in recent years. There's clarity around that, so there is upon initial collegiate enrollment, because whether in theory or in practice, you have better access to information from that time forward, as opposed to somebody who may be just out there that reached the age of majority at 18. And Clay, I think I'd go back to the perspective offered earlier that will remain, at least for the moment, allowing our institutions to make those decisions on incoming freshmen. I think what you see right now, relative to the circumstance of Mississippi State, is that that young man will be under more scrutiny than any other student on that campus. And the hope certainly is he fulfills the expectations now placed upon him. Whether we always have that type of approach as a conference is one that I can't predict changing. I also am quite clear that the amount of effort we've contributed is unique to us, because we are really trying to find our way through difficult circumstances like these, and understand, given our prominence, how do we deal with those appropriately as an organization, as an institution, and how do you treat individuals fairly?
Legally, can you do it? I mean, do you have a legal team that sits there? Because I'm just trying to work through in my head, if the SEC had said, we're not going to allow, basically what you're getting into then is a screening mechanism, right, for incoming recruits that are similar. Maybe you have test scores, but we've never had, that I'm aware of, any kind of moral screening that goes into who deserves to represent schools. Would you want that authority? Is that even legal to do?
Yeah, I don't know that I respond to want. In the legal perspective, I'm not the lawyer. We have had those types of conversations with attorneys, and that's part of the broad word difficulty, that there's an assumption, it seems now, that you just flip a switch and we can take care of it at the conference level. Well, that may not be the case. In fact, there may be challenges at the institutional level in certain matters. There's a challenge that may be out there on accessing full and complete information, whether they've been enrolled in college or not. We've clearly established an expectation for a best effort as it relates to transfers, because the sense, the learning, the analysis is that's a place where we can access the kind of information to inform decisions.